So I wanted to make a quick video just to show the general character of this blueberry species. So I'm standing here in basically a remnant of a montane longleaf pine savanna habitat. So we've got some longleaf, post oak, there's some sand hickory, shortleaf pine, some dogwoods around here, and some black oaks. This is mostly an upland area. It gets very dry. Now on the ground there's a lot of Vaccinium pallidum around. You can see all over the ground here Vaccinium pallidum. Lots of little blue stem. There's a lot of stuff like that going on. And here is a plant, and this is the blueberry species down here, and you can see it's very colonial, spreading from the roots here. It's pretty low grown. Now this little patch actually burned in a controlled burn 2 years ago, so this is 2 years of growth. But this is fairly typical of how you find them. The stems can get about maybe as tall as 3 or 4 feet, but typically they're very arching and they don't branch very much. They just sort of like, it doesn't like form a crown. And as you can see, it just sort of spreads around everywhere. It gets probably about twice as tall as the pallidum typically. But as you can see, as you're looking back up the hill here, it just transitions from this unusual species. And these all have the black fruit. Can't see any of that right now, but they would have the black fruit. And they're also very much more hairy than pallidum, and they don't have any of that glaucous blue hue to them. And the margins are typically very finely serrated. And they're just very hairy. They're hairier than any of the other blueberries that occur in this area, at least. But the fruit itself is not hairy. The fruit is smooth. And they don't have any of those. There's no glands on them. None of the hairs. Or despite being very hairy, I've never seen any kind of like stipitate glandular hairs or anything of that sort. So they don't really seem to fit anything. They don't key to anything. I mean, I could walk around this hill and we could find multiple different populations. Some of them are more deeply shaded in places down there where it hasn't burned. Like if I walk down here, we got some Alabama cherry, which is fairly typical of these montane longleaf type of habitats. Oh, here's another one, another patch right next to me. I just walked past it. Here it is, see? I mean, they're kind of narrow-leaved compared to the Fuscatum. And now Fuscatum does occur quite close to here. If you walk down the hill, get down to the creek bottom, it's just a 2-minute walk down there to the creek bottom, you will find Fuscatum down there. You can grab a leaf off it and bring it back to these and compare it. Once you see them side by side, it's like, no, these aren't the same thing. And here's one that's sort of got taller, see? But again, it just doesn't, they sort of branch once and then don't really like to branch again. It's fairly typical of them. And you can see they sort of clump a little bit with where the stems come out, but then they spread underground from there and just spread around. Let's walk back over here. Again, we got some Elliottii in here. There's something that keys to Corymbosum, although it's not really supposed to be. It is in east central Alabama. Some dwarf pawpaw in here. These are typical things that I find in the same places. So, it's these dry habitats. Usually you don't find this new blueberry at the very top of the hill, but it's usually on the upper hillside. And I've never found any of them down in the bottoms. You sometimes will find them close to the Fuscatum, where there's a little transition point where sometimes the Fuscatum get a little bit higher up the hills, but I've never found any of these species growing in the bottoms. Let's walk over here because there's a nice good patch over here. Now this patch over here has not been disturbed by fire at all yet. It will be, but we haven't burned this area yet. So you can see all of this stuff on this hill here, this whole patch. You can see it all over the place. This has not been disturbed at all for a while. Now this habitat would have once, of course, been more open. I suspect that these are being shade suppressed quite a lot. But you can see they're just everywhere. And I did actually dig up one from this patch here, or at least I tried to dig it up, and that was, a good example where it was very difficult to dig it up because the roots were all attached, so it didn't really want to dig up. But again, here you can see it. Here's a good one. It's kind of gone a little bit taller. So you can see how there's a few stems coming up from that spot, and then you go over here and there's another stem coming up from there, and I'm pretty sure those are going to be connected. And again, these leaves are just very smooth. There's no glaucousness to them at all. Very hairy. And you can see the little buds going on there. There's not many flower buds on these because they're very shade suppressed, but they grow back from fire very vigorously. They seem to like it, and I assume this area would have once burned quite regularly. I think, especially with the longleaf here. I don't really think the longleaf, would have been very present here without those regular fires. So, and again, you just see it all through here. And it's quite common. It's really common on this area, this patch of land here. But I've found it miles away from here in various different locations. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better idea of what it's like to find this thing in the wild and why it feels so immediately distinctive from Fuscatum in particular.